Welcome to the Just Live podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Stevens, and I'm inviting you in on my personal journey of learning and discovering how to live a life with more connection, joy, and purpose. I'll be sitting down with people from all walks of life to dive into topics including trauma, mental health, mindfulness, the nuances of love and relationships, and much more. I hope these conversations empower you to expand on what serves you, release what doesn't, and just live. Hello and welcome back to the Just Live podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Stevens, and on today's episode, I have a conversation with Faith Ashenden. She's the CEO of That Healing Feeling, which is a self-healing academy for healing chronic symptoms with nervous system regulation. She's also the host of her own podcast, That Healing Feeling. Faith has an educational background in psychology. She's a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. Say that 10 times fast. She's certified in EFT. She's certified in hypnotherapy, and she's also a trauma-informed coach. Basically, to sum it up, her work is to help women self-heal chronic illness and anxiety through nervous system regulation and neurohacking. And if you're like me, you might be thinking, what does that mean? Well, you'll find out. I found Faith on Instagram. One of her reels came up on my Explore page or the For You page, and it was discussing how she's helped many clients heal food intolerances with this nervous system work. And that really spoke to me because for the last year or so, I've been dealing with a lot of gut issues that I can't seem to get to the root cause of. A lot of chronic bloating, abdominal pain, and I've tried what feels like everything, and it doesn't seem like it really moves the needle at all. I've done different diets, like the low FODMAP diet. I've gone gluten-free, dairy-free. I've eliminated processed foods, added sugar. I have tried various supplements and probiotics. So I was really intrigued with the work that she does with the mind-gut connection. So I wanted to find out more. What is this work? How does it work? If I can do things on my own to heal these things I'm experiencing, I want to know about it. And I want to share it with everyone else. Because it seems like I've realized more and more how many people are experiencing gut issues. And you'll find out why in the episode. So I hope that you find it enlightening. I am really glad that I found Faith because this is now something I'm going to definitely be diving into deeper and doing this work personally. And I'll let you know if it seems to help some of the issues that I've been experiencing. If you like this episode or you think it might resonate with someone, please review it, share it with a friend. That helps me grow the podcast and allows me to continue exploring all of these interesting topics that I find so fascinating and sharing with you what I find. So thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. So welcome to the Just Live podcast.
Thank you.
I would like you to tell everyone that's listening who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Okay. So my name is Faith Ashenden, and I am the founder and CEO of That Healing Feeling, which is a company that serves women who are looking to heal chronic illness of any kind, or chronic anxiety, any really like physical or mental, emotional chronic symptoms. I firmly believe that the mind and body are one. So you can see that it's sort of irrelevant to me where you're experiencing the symptom, but as long as it's in the mind or body, that's sort of my area where I work. And my unique approach is I help people heal through nervous system regulation. So we do it in a very niche way, which is using the subconscious mind to regulate the nervous system. And that is my area of expertise and my like little tiny space that I go a million miles deep on. And I do it because I was very sick for a very long time and I was bedridden. I was out of a job. And I kind of felt like my life was over. And I had the typical story of like trying everything to heal. And certain things did move the needle, but I was still very sick and very anxious. And so then when I did this work, I fully healed. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to now start a business and help other people because everyone should do this. Like everyone should heal. Everyone should feel good. So that's why I started That Healing Feeling.
Yeah. So I found you, I'm, on Instagram, and the Explore page is a great and also dangerous place, I'm realizing. but I came across one of your videos, one of your reels that had talked about how you were healing like food intolerances and that you tried, elimination diets and all these different things. And then finally working with your nervous system to heal these food intolerances. I don't know if it was you specifically or clients that you said that you helped heal or both. But that really spoke to me because for the last year, I've been dealing with like serious gut issues. And kind of like you said, how you were trying all these different things with your autoimmune disease. I feel like I'm in that boat right now where I'm like, I'm trying everything and it doesn't feel like nothing really is moving the needle. So it's really frustrating. And even last night, I was texting with a friend and I kind of just went on like a rampage. And it's hard because I feel like, at least in the online space, it's great because we can get so much information that we didn't have access to, 5 or 10 years ago. But then on the other side of that coin, we're getting so much information and it's very confusing. It's very conflicting. So I'm like, do I go gluten free? Do I go dairy free? Should I start drinking raw milk? Do I do low carb? Maybe I'm not eating enough carbs. Am I eating too much protein? Maybe I'm not eating enough protein. All these things. And it's like, oh, should I be doing ice baths? Oh no, maybe it's actually stressing me out more to do ice baths. I just like went on this rampage and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I'm sure you have people and clients come to you where they're in that boat. How do you kind of start with them? Where do you begin?
Yeah, so I think you're right. There's a lot of information online about, especially in the like wellness space. It's very
Yeah.
saturated now, which in many ways is a very positive thing because people are thinking outside of the box. But then also there's a lot of like, this biohacking community and like what works for people, they're sharing. And I think that we have to remember that everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no objective like danger food or danger activity. That's just ridiculous, right? Like
Yeah.
we all evolved from different parts of the world. We have different ancestors, and actually what works for someone might work for them and not work for me, and nothing is right or wrong. It's just what works for them and what works for me. And I think we've lost sight of that a little bit, if I'm honest. And I think that there are a lot of loud voices saying that things are objectively one way or the other. And actually, I think that that's really detrimental because it's basically creating fear in people. People are scared of gluten, they're scared of dairy, they're scared of grains, they're scared of processed sugar and alcohol, and
Yeah.
they're scared of a lot of the things that like are just part of our day-to-day life. And I'm not here to say, whether I support personally these things, yes or no, is sort of irrelevant because that's what works for me. But I think that instilling fear is never a good thing because it's
Yeah.
in direct opposition to the work that I do, which is instilling safety within the body. So I think
I
first
love
and
that.
foremost, it's really understanding that actually, none of these things are anything to be scared of, including food. I mean, food is not inherently like moral. It's not right and wrong, and it's not going to derail you, and it's all okay. But at the same time, having sort of this one sort of bit of establishing that intuition with yourself. So we all know that when we eat something and we feel inflamed or whatever, that's like not a good feeling. And our body is like, hey, I really don't like this right now. Now,
Yeah.
there are a lot of reasons why that may be the case. And so that also begs the question, do we have bacterial overgrowth, candida overgrowth, parasites, etc. And then there's the nervous system component that's like, if you are highly dysregulated and you're stuck in survival, you are never going to eat and feel good. You're
Right.
never going to absorb those nutrients and you're not going to digest properly. So you could be taking loads of supplements and even eating a really good diet, but you're still bloating and you're still like having all these issues like brain fog, brain fog, yeah, etc. So then those are typically the clients that work with me because they've kind of like done the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's two sides to the coin, which is why I say like the mind and body are one, because even if you've gone the functional medicine route and you've done all of that, you find that because you've instilled fear around certain foods, you basically just have to think about it and you bloat because like you're so scared of those foods. And so I think that and you will have physical reactions. Like you might actually still break out when you have dairy, and you might still I don't know, whatever your like issues, GI issues are around that, even though you've actually healed your gut, because there's so much fear around the food. So what I'm interested in is helping people create freedom. So I'm not here to say that I think you should eat gluten and dairy and grains and alcohol. I mean, I personally eat all those things. But I'm not saying that it's good for everyone, but I want you to have the choice to decide whether you want that in your life. And I think that's what makes me really unique, because it's like, I open the possibility that you can have what you want. And then out of love for your body and what feels good for you, you decide what you're going to nourish your body with. But there's a lot of blocking out the noise, because that's not helpful. And so a big part of what the starting point, which is your question, is let's start with the sort of the mind detox, which is blocking out all the crap. If it's not serving you on social media, TV, Reddit, Facebook, you have to unfollow. You have to literally not consume that in the way that you wouldn't consume a food. Because if it is eliciting a fear response, then you're only further dysregulating your nervous system, and your gut's going to stay in the same place. So it's all about what we're doing internally. And obviously that's very like simplified first step, but I think actually that's a really important first step in this entire process.
Yeah, my gosh, that makes so much sense to start that way. And I think there's so much to be said for the beliefs that you have around what you're consuming and how powerful that is. Because when I think back and I'm like, okay, when did these issues start? Like, I was able to eat gluten and sugar and drink every weekend. And at what point did my body just kind of start rejecting all of these things? And is it when I started doing more learning and research, and then some fears came out, like, oh, maybe gluten isn't good for me. Oh, maybe dairy isn't, good for me. Alcohol isn't good for me. So then the mind, creates these ideas that, we're going to reject all this stuff because you're afraid of it. So that's wild to think about. I wanted to talk about the nervous system, and I just recently learned that there are more nerves in your gut than in your entire body, which is so fascinating to me and really speaks to the mind-gut connection. Can you elaborate on that or talk a little bit more about that research and what that means for us?
Well, I think I want to tie in what you just said as well, though. It's really funny because I just finished writing a post on literally what you just said to post later today. And that ties into the next question. So I think what people don't realize is, and because starting with Western medicine, which is I think everyone's first touch point, is there's this idea that what you need is outside of you. So we're sort of indoctrinated into, you take this medication, or you, I don't know, like engage in this activity that's like out here, and that's going to help you find the healing that you need. And then usually we're funneled into the integrative space when that doesn't work. So we still are operating under that same narrative, but we're switching it to supplements and food, what have you, different products, like non-toxic products or whatever. And, that's also still very helpful, but I'm thinking about the narrative here that's damaging, which is all you need is outside of you. And then when you come to my space, it's not, the traditional nervous system, like ice baths and like humming and gargling and whatever. It really is what's happening in the mind. What's inside of you is the key. And so what you said, beliefs, is my specific area of expertise. So where I focus primarily when regulating the nervous system is beliefs and identity. Now, our beliefs are actually directly informing our nervous system and is affecting us on a physiological level. Yeah. So what people don't understand is that when we believe something is dangerous, our body, because it's unconscious, our body is not conscious of time. Our body thinks it's happening right now. It doesn't understand that we have this capacity to think in the future, which is what anxiety is. So let's say we perceive something as dangerous. We have a thought that it might be dangerous. Our body, which is unconscious, thinks this is dangerous right now, and it's going to elicit a cascade effect of stress hormones in the body that causes a physiological effect on whatever we're thinking about. So with the gut, it's so intricately connected to the brain. If we don't even take the time to sit down and breathe before we eat, it's going to affect how we digest our food. It's going to affect how we feel for the rest of the day eating that food. But even more than that, if we believe that something's dangerous and we actually believe it to be true, then when we are eating that food, our body is literally going to shift states into a sympathetic dominant state, which is our survival state, which means we're going to send all of our energy to our extremities, including the jaw, so we can fight or flight. We're going to take the energy away from like the logic centers, digestion, procreation, reproduction, like all of that is going to be on the back burner. So even beyond that, though, think about the placebo effect. And I use this all the time in my work. There's this unexplained thing, right? Like, how does this happen? How is it that all these people are taking these, if you will, sham medications, and they're having these insane reactions that are very specific to what they're told the medicine will do?
Right.
This is what we're finding to be true in the up-to-date research in the subconscious space, that if we believe something specific about what we're eating, right, that it's going to have this effect on our body, we're going to freaking feel that. Like, our mind is powerful and it manifests physically in our body because our body's listening, because our body thinks that whatever we think is true because it's unconscious. And so we have to be very careful about that inner narrative and understand that it's all connected. Our body's constantly responding to the chemical messengers being sent from our brain, and those messengers come from our thoughts, right? So it's all kind of like one big like cyclical thing, and we cannot underestimate the impact that that information in our mind and the beliefs that are formed is having on our physical experience day to day.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oh my gosh. Um, and it's interesting too, even if you don't have the belief that the food, specifically the food you're eating is like dangerous or is going to hurt you or upset you, if you're just stressed in general, you're not going to be in that rest and digest state. And so your body's going to have the same effect essentially.
Yep. So I would say like the number one thing to focus on when you're trying to heal is the stress. Because again, like if you are, and this is what I see a lot with my clients, and this was myself included prior to this work, is very anal around food. So like all organic, whole foods, cooked a certain way, stored in glass containers, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, that's good, can
Yeah.
be. But if you're stressed while you're doing it, what's the freaking point? Literally, what's the
Yeah.
point? You're still going to feel like shit. So
It's more, and
for
it's
me,
also,
it's like,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, it's
Sorry.
like I'd rather you focus on your stress level and not do all those other things to begin with, because it's actually going to be better for you. Like, you're actually going to be able to digest your food and absorb nutrients. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Why spend all
Right.
this money and time on food where you're still getting your lab work done and you're like completely depleted in vitamins and minerals, even though you're eating all this amazing food? Why? Because your digestion has halted because you're living in a state of stress. So let's get this right first, right? Like building blocks, like kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Let's address like the foundation of all healing first. And then we can sprinkle on the nice to haves, avoiding plastic and having a glass container. Again, a nice to have. But if you're
Yeah.
constantly stressed, what's the point? You
Right.
know?
If you're constantly stressed doing all of those things, it's almost defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
Just perpetuating the stress because you're feeling
Yeah.
like you have to be so specific and follow all these rules. That's how I'm feeling right now. It's like I feel like I can't even like go out to dinner or meet a friend for lunch because I'm like, well, what am I going to eat? What if they don't have any gluten-free options? Well, blah, blah, blah. And then I get stressed out before I even go. And then if I do end up eating something like that, I feel like the thought and the belief is there in the back of my mind, like, oh, I'm going to be so bloated after this, or I'm going to be so uncomfortable. And so that has to have an effect on what's happening, what's going on
100%.
in my mind. Let's go back to the stress because we are living very stressful lives. And it feels like there's things that we can do, but there's a lot of things that we can't do. Like my job is very stressful. I sell real estate and, I work only by commission. It's high stress, especially in these markets. So I can't just quit my job and find something that's less stressful right now. I'm sure a lot of people are in that boat, or, they're working a lot, they're raising a family, life is expensive, inflation, all of these things. What are some ways that people can actually reduce the stress in their lives um, without feeling like they have to change everything?
So
And yeah.
Yeah. I want to like also emphasize the fact that, like I'm a mom of two. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's a really hard time.
Yeah.
I own this business and I have a team of 8 people, and I'm a wife and a friend. And like, what I mean when I say that is I get it. Like I get the pressures of modern day life as well as responsibilities that come with seasons of life. And so I always say to people, the kind of advice I give is what I do. And I think that if I can do it in the situation and season that I'm in, I really feel like other people can too. And
Hmm.
there are a lot of schools of thought that say, you have to do an hour of this and an hour of that. And I think, well, that's not really feasible for people. You're like sort of average person, if you will, who has responsibility. So I think first and foremost, like we have to accept the idea that we can be regulated despite our responsibilities and whatever life is throwing at us right now. The idea of regulation is that not that you avoid the stressors of modern day life, but that you build resiliency in the face of the stressors of modern day life. So those things are always going to happen.
Yeah.
Even if your life is pretty chill right now and you're having like a really good season where you're like, oh, like everything's like go with the flow. Well, yeah, seasons come and go, right? So that's going to ebb and flow. And like one day it might feel like shit's hitting the fan. And that's part of like planet Earth. But the way you feel inside can stay the same. So that's the art of this work. And how do you do that? I really believe that it's a very small micro habits that allow us to build that resiliency. First and foremost is boundaries. It's like kind of a not sexy thing to say. It's not like this, aha, like that's going to change everything, or at least it doesn't sound like that, but it's true. Boundaries with your mind. So not just like the typical idea of boundaries, but in terms of the information that you're consuming. Um, Anything that's eliciting a stress response is going to become a sort of neurotransmitter addiction. So if it's eliciting those stress hormones, those give us a hit. In the same way that a drug that gives you that hit gives you a hit. It's literally the same thing. And so we get addicted to these stress hormones and these stressful situations
Mm.
that keep our nervous system in high alert because it's like energy giving. And so we need to train ourselves to not search for that hit and not entertain that hit, whether it be in the form of news. Like I haven't read the news in like 3 years. I guarantee you if something happens, you'll know. Unfollowing anyone on social media across any platform, not engaging in anything on Reddit, not joining any Facebook groups where like there's a single discussion about something negative, not watching shows that are going to have like adrenaline spikes, not having conversations that are going to give you adrenaline spikes. If you have those relationships and you can't set those boundaries, cutting off those relationships, like it's kind of really rigid, like,
Yeah.
ways of being in that sense. But then outside of that, it's that internal responsibility. So it's really simple things like creating space for yourself first thing in the morning, whether you have 2 minutes or 20 minutes. You're not going to get up and look at your phone. That time where your subconscious mind is open to receiving information. That's where you're going to meditate. That's where you're going to visualize. That's where you're going to affirm who you want to be and get the message across to your subconscious. Same with before you go to bed. Your mind is also in what we call a theta state, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. That's when you want to do those things instead of scrolling on your phone and giving that energy away and the sort of beliefs away to other people without your best interest at heart. Throughout the day, it's about punctuating your day and really listening for the signs. So, for example, in our day-to-day life, you said, people are sitting at a computer or they're in high stress jobs and they reach to regulate constantly, but they don't realize that. Since our body always wants to regulate, it will tell us when we're uncomfortable. It will either be like anxiety or a pain, and often people will reach for a snack. They'll reach for a cigarette. They'll scroll on their phone, something like that, just to re-regulate. But they don't realize that that's what they're doing. So
Yeah.
it's about listening to those signs where we're pushing ourselves past our limits and saying, okay, something feels uncomfortable. I'm going to regulate in a resourceful way and actually get myself back to safety instead of just distract myself. So I might go take a walk and take a deep breath, remove myself from technology, just even for, 2 minutes. I might read something that is like calming for me. Like just take a freaking second, because we don't need to be a million miles an hour. Like we can create 2-minute increments. And these micro habits and like small boundaries keep us in touch with what our body is trying to tell us. And over time, what you'll see is the body feels safer and safer and safer. And you start to have less of those thoughts, less of those physical sensations, and more control of the logic centers of your brain, so that there's that emotional regulation. So obviously there's a lot that we can do in this space, but I think like as a starting point, this is a place to start.
Yeah, definitely. It's wild how some of those behaviors become so automatic, like reaching for the phone, reaching for a drink, reaching for this, how many times have we heard, oh, I just need to unwind and like pour a glass of wine.
Mm-hmm.
So creating the habits and doing things in place of those to really kind of reset the nervous system. And then that way, when those moments come up, you're doing, taking a minute of just breathing or doing a quick meditation or, like you said, going for a walk. I love going for walks. Um, I guess that goes hand in hand then with really creating that safety in the body, like you discussed earlier. Um, Starting your day, not being on your phone, priming your mind. You had said, I think, like choosing how you want to feel or saying like how you want to feel that day. Can you elaborate on that? Is that a practice that you do? Is that something specific that you teach?
Yeah, I do. I teach my students that, the way you feel is a choice. So you don't want to live your life thinking that I will feel however my circumstances dictate. So essentially, it's that idea that your state of being internally, um, most of the time can be what you want it to be, right? Like sometimes you're going to have something that's sad and you're going to process that. But generally speaking, it cannot be contingent upon where the wind blows you that day. And so I think being really intentional about, how do I want to feel today? Like, what is my day going to be? And thinking about like, the highest version of myself, like, how do they feel? How do they act? How do they think? What are their habits? And intentionally becoming that every single day at every single turn, and really holding that state of being within yourself, because that's the true test of regulating and evolving, is being able to kind of rise above that in a way that's really authentic and not like toxic positivity, and
Yeah.
really feeling that, like really feeling like, what, there are two opportunities in every situation. You can focus on what you like, you can focus on what you don't like. And that's the way it is in life. You look about like the quantum world, right? There's always multiple in every moment. And so the choice is in every moment, are you going to focus on what you don't like? Or are you going to focus on what you like? Because there's an option. And those who are focusing on what they don't like, that's addicting. You are literally
Yeah.
priming your brain, those neural pathways, to continue focusing attention on what you don't want in your life. And you're vibrating at that frequency, you're holding a low emotional state, and it's impacting the physiology of the body. Or you can choose to focus on what you do like, because you can't control the situation. That's false. There's no control. All you can do is focus your attention and hold it where you want it to be. And you're going to bring more of that because you're going to look for that, and your actions will follow and your nervous system will follow. And so it's a really simple redirection of focus on, okay, how can I stay in control of the one thing I can control, which is my focus? Because I can't control the variables around me. Really, like, life is going to happen. Like, people have a really like ridiculous false sense of control, and this is a trauma response. You can't. So all you can do is your best, and know that no matter what happens, you're okay, and you can stay focused on what you want. And so I think in the morning, reminding yourself every single day to not get swept into the human behavior of woe is me and staying stuck in a cycle, and kind of rising above, is where I teach my students to go. And that's like the real life changing work.
Yeah, I know you just mentioned trauma, so I did want to start talking about that and how that ties in to all of this and the nervous system regulation. I know in your content you've said signs of like nervous system dysregulation or people pleasing, overanalyzing, like worst case scenario responses, defensiveness. That all sounds also like a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it connect? And like in your work specifically, where are you working with clients in regards to their trauma and regulating their nervous system?
So those trauma responses that you're referring to, those are very behavioral focused trauma responses where in an attempt to control the situation for safety, people respond in a more extreme way, like perfectionism, overanalyzing, all or nothing thinking, what have you, where this idea that if they strive to be quote unquote perfect, or if they can try to control their situation, if they can create like black and white meanings for everything, whatever, that they have some control over their reality so that nothing dangerous can happen. So it rests on the premise that the world is a dangerous place. And that is a sort of trauma-informed way of behaving. And I think that we all have traumas and we all have different behaviors that are linked to that. But the specific women that I'm working with really fall into this category. Really high achieving type A, perfectionist. I mean, that was me. That's why I serve versions of me, like, and I think I attract people who are literally like me. It's funny, we have in my marketing department, like the, ideal client archetype, and it's like 5 paragraphs of me. And I'm like, but it's also all my clients, and so I get it, really, I do. But the point is, these behaviors rest on the idea that the world is not a safe space. So that is a result of trauma. At one point, these behaviors were resourceful. Like during the time of the traumas, responding in this way was resourceful, but it's no longer resourceful, but yet it's still kind of deeply ingrained within that behavior. And so again, it comes back to, can we create this notion and get the message across to the body that actually we don't need to be prepared for worst case scenario, because the world's not a dangerous place. We can't live our lives like that. It's not conducive to life to live our lives like, oh, it's constantly something could happen. And so we have to get the message across to our body that, there's no bear, there's no lion, like right now it's fine. And any problems we're dealing with, like they're not life threatening. And if they are, that's obviously a different story. So, that's where that comes from in like a really simplified way. And again, like for me, it's just getting the message across to the body. Like that event that caused this response is no longer happening. Like it is well over. And we are now here, strong and capable, and we don't need that response anymore. It's no longer resourceful. So we can go back to this assumption that the world is a safe place and change our behavior. And in doing so, you see everything else change because the nervous system feels like, I don't need to be on high alert anymore.
Yeah. And I know like the nervous system in the brain doesn't know the difference between like an imagined reality and like a real one right in front of you. So if you are over analyzing and thinking about, all these like worst case scenarios, you're literally triggering like the stress response in your body, and that's causing so much dysregulation. It seems like such a vicious cycle. And I wanted to go back to, you had mentioned, like people being addicted to stress, but also people identifying kind of, or being like addicted to the identity of their pain. Is that something that kind of ties into this, and feeling like, because for me, if I think about it, and I think like for someone that was in your situation where you're trying all of these things, nothing's working, but it's really frustrating to go to that person and say, you can heal this, or you kind of create a reality, and you can be in charge of your healing. I feel like some people might not receive that well, or might feel they're causing, a lot of their symptoms, which like in reality, we kind of are. But if somebody is like identifying so much with what they're experiencing, how do you work through that?
Yeah, and I do want to like clarify that, it really isn't a blame game, because I don't think anyone is consciously, listen, things have inception points, right? So I'm not saying that people are the reason why they're sick at all, because I don't think that's true at all. There are so many circumstances that had to come into play for someone to even, have the onset of a chronic illness or whatever. Right. And we all know that, I'm sure, like we've looked into epigenetic changes in our environment and the food and yada, yada, and stressful situations. So of course that person like didn't want that to happen. And of course that person also on their journey has tried a lot and is like, nope, I've tried meditating and that didn't work or whatever. So like I personally get it. And I know exactly what you're saying. And I come up against this a lot. And I think It's interesting you asked me this because I've just brought on quite a few people onto my admissions team. And I said, the number one thing that makes a good client for me, someone that I can really help, is this: they have an internal locus of control. That is really the only credential. What that means is, if you have an external locus of control, you think that you have no control over your reality. They're basically saying that because of their circumstances, they can't heal. And then internal locus of control is someone who says, yes, this happened for X, Y, and Z reasons, almost irrelevant, but I am where I am today, and I know that I can heal myself. That person believes that they have the control within themselves. So I'm not going to work with someone who doesn't have an internal locus of control, because for me, then that's irrelevant. Like, if you don't think that you have the power, then I can't work with you until you believe that. But when someone believes that, that is where the change happens. And this idea of radical responsibility is nothing to do with blame, because the past doesn't exist. It's not relevant to me. I don't really care about the past. It literally isn't real. What's real is what's happening right now. So if someone is coming to me saying, I know very little about this, let's say, which is not usually the case, but even if they did, that I do believe that I have some control because the other things aren't working. And actually, I think that I can do it now, then I can help them. So to answer your question, if I'm completely honest, if someone just is like, well, I think this is a bunch of bullshit and I feel like you're attacking me, yada, yada, they're probably not even on my page because it's going to come off as offensive. But again, people who work with me understand that has absolutely nothing to do with blame and everything to do with empowerment. And until someone is willing to step into a space of empowerment and to kind of release those stories and the woe is me, no offense, because I've been there, so I can say that, until we release that victim mentality, we cannot heal. And I have zero interest in working with someone who's playing those deck of cards, because that is the worst place to be. It is the worst place to be, to do the victim mentality. And I'm interested in empowering people. So yeah, that is where my paths do not cross. But I do think that those people can obviously come over to this space, but it takes a lot of inner work. And that only can be done by the individual.
Right, exactly. Well, speaking of empowerment, I know in a recent podcast episode that you put out, you were talking about self-love, and kind of that is really also a starting point to a lot of this, and even feeling like you're worthy of healing. So if someone comes to you and they do have that internal compass, they do feel like there's control, but then working through understanding that they're worthy of healing and that they're deserving of feeling good and that they can heal themselves, where do we start with that?
I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that if you want to have an impact on the world, you want to raise the vibration, the consciousness of the planet, or, be a good parent or a good friend, spouse, whatever, make an impact, live in alignment with your purpose, you have to be doing this work, right? If you are your most broken, sick version of yourself, you're not going to do that, because your internal state is not the vibration that is in alignment with changing the world, living your purpose, raising children who are going to be the change, you're going to be loving and kind and impactful. So the most selfless thing you can do is heal yourself. When you heal yourself, you not only can live in your purpose, but you become evidence to other people that they can heal, and people need to believe it to do it, as cliche as it sounds. And this is what we were touching on earlier. You have to believe that you have that power to step into it. That is a prerequisite. So when you heal yourself, you give other people that belief, and then they can step into their power, and you live in your purpose. You heal yourself so that your children don't have to do the work. You heal yourself so that you can be a good spouse, so that you can enjoy your life, so that you can do whatever you want to do, right? So first and foremost, that is my first response to people. As long as you continue to live in this way, you're not breaking the cycle. You're not going to live in your purpose. You're not raising the, vibration, the frequency, all of that of this planet, the consciousness, and you're not going to have fun. So there's that. And the other side of that, the worthy side, is a tricky one, because a lot of people don't feel like they're inherently worthy of putting in this amount of effort and time and energy and prioritizing themselves. And I always come back to what I said on that podcast, and what I tell my students is that worth is not something that is earned. So worthiness is something we're all born with. There's this narrative that I don't know when it started, with children where we say good boy, good girl, whatever, or bad boy, bad girl. And we punish if they do the quote unquote wrong thing, and we reward them if they do the right thing. And so they believe in order to achieve things, they need to do something. And they believe if they get punished, it's because they did something and they're not worthy of whatever. So that's a bunch of bullshit and not rooted in reality at all. So it doesn't actually really matter what you do. Literally, it does not matter. It doesn't matter because you are inherently born equally as worthy as everyone else. And if you think about it critically, outside the rules that your parents and society puts on you, you know, we all arrive here and we all technically are kind of like at that same level. Like we can do whatever we want, but we're put these like rigid infrastructure of societal rules and parental rules and yada yada, which sort of controls our behavior on this notion that we have to do something to be worthy of something. But it's not real. Just like any other like societal narrative, it's not actually real. It's a belief. And again, beliefs aren't real. Beliefs are literally made up. And so when you look on the belief level, you can shatter generations and past lives of trauma by shifting a belief like that. And then that has such a massive ripple effect. So yeah, worthiness is a big one, but it's one that we can shift really easily.
How are we shifting it?
Well, with that, so, you know, we really focus on, you know, different stories and examples of where worthiness came about. In terms of like the notion of you have to be worthy. Again, the primary one being this good girl, bad boy, and kind of going through like what that was like and how that primed the brain. And then we just start doing micro habits of self-love and being really intentional about that. So like, for example, in my program, I make everything really intentional before it becomes like habitual to the brain and before like self-love just becomes like who they are. And so we really think about like, you know, who you love the most. So it might be like your spouse or your parent or your child and like what you would do for them. And then we give ourselves like 5 minutes of that and then 10 minutes of that. And then we start like behaving that way towards ourselves. When the brain starts to register that that's having a physiological impact and it collects that evidence that it's worthwhile, then we actually change the physical structure of the brain and it becomes a lot easier to do that. And then we start to have that subconscious understanding that like all along we were deserving of this. So it's almost like very manual to kind of build this infrastructure within the brain and solidify this idea. But usually before all of that, even just talking about how the idea of worthiness was like built within our society and where it comes from is really powerful for people just to even get their mind to a place that like, oh my God, this is made up. And that's for any belief. So we have tons of methods for shifting beliefs. I could run through so many live sessions to help someone subconsciously shift a belief. But at the end of the day, the most powerful thing you can do is look for evidence of where that belief isn't real. Because you need to provide the brain evidence that that belief isn't truth. Because right now, a belief is something that your brain thinks is true. And so your reality
changing the thought will change the belief.
Yeah.
If
So
you do it
your
over
brain
and over
literally
again.
thinks, that's like reality. So people think I can't heal in this environment. The brain is like, okay, we can't heal in this environment. And so it is. And that's what I say to my clients when they're like, I believe this. And I'm like, okay, and so it is. Because if you believe that, your brain thinks it's true. But what if you said I can heal in this environment? Just let's play with it. What if? Neither of them are true, right? Because beliefs are made up. So let's choose. What do we want it to be? And people don't think they have that power.
Yeah, they do feel powerless. But I think it's interesting too how uncomfortable people might feel in even speaking those beliefs out loud. And like you said, sourcing where did that even come from? And reminding yourself that it's not, and then rewriting the beliefs. And I guess, you know, incorporating certain practices to help instill that, you know, in your brain and in your nervous system is what's going to help you rewrite that and form a new belief, essentially.
Yeah, so I would say to anyone who's looking to shift a belief, look, like you said, so identify it first and foremost, and then look for evidence in reality where the belief isn't true. And it can be anything, and as much as you possibly can. So you're looking to provide your brain this evidence, because the brain is an evidence collecting machine. All information is essentially just evidence, and it serves to confirm or deny your beliefs. And so, but we are, because of something called the reticular activating system, we're constantly looking to confirm our beliefs. So we live in our own world. We don't live in reality. We live in our minds. So find your belief, look for evidence against it. All you have to do is get compelling enough evidence to prove that that's not true. And when you shatter the illusion that that is true, then your mind is open to explore the alternative possibility. So then the fun part is choosing what you want to believe. I want to believe that I can heal. I want to believe, like right now in my program, my students are choosing their beliefs, and it's like blowing their mind. They're like, one is like, I want to believe that I can fully heal and I'll never relapse. And I'm like, okay. She's like, can I do that? I'm like,
Of course.
why couldn't you do that? Like, who's holding you back? Like, you hold you back, I guess. Yeah. And then look for that evidence. Look for evidence of people who've healed and not relapsed. There's a lot of evidence. You've just never looked for it before.
Yeah,
Boom,
like you said.
you'll make new beliefs.
Yeah, you're trying to find all the evidence that affirms what you already believe, because your brain just wants you to stay in the familiar, even though it's not serving you. So very helpful. I guess I know we're kind of wrapping up on time, so I'll just ask my last question that I ask everybody. I like to know a little bit more about like you personally and your journey. So I know that you healed yourself of a chronic illness and now you're teaching others to heal. And my last question is there anything in your life that you would like to expand on, and anything that you would like to release?
Is there anything in my life that I'd like to expand on? Yeah, I mean, I'm always doing this. So, I practice what I preach. I work with my own coach and I shift beliefs every single week. It's, the way that I change my reality is by changing my mind, and my reality changes in huge ways. Right now, I'm going through a big identity shift, a chosen identity shift. So I've identified that I want to be someone else. And I'm currently tearing apart the beliefs that formed the identity that I was, that I think was kind of keeping me a bit stuck. So I'm working on releasing that. And, it's really hard work. I'm doing this to create a shift in my business. And I guess the reason why I always share this in my podcast and in real life is because I want people to understand that healing is, at the risk of being cliche, a journey. So it's not like, you're going to just heal your gut and then you're good to go. I think the purpose is that we're always evolving and moving and expanding, like you said. And I think the happiness in all of it isn't the getting to the other side of what you want. It's enjoying the shift and the release and the experience of being a human. And I think that I'm very much in it, and I do all the things that I teach my students. And so it's definitely a journey. I'll say that for sure.
It is for sure. Well, thank you. And I'm really glad that I kind of stumbled across your content, because it's definitely given me kind of a point to shift in where my focus has been. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate your time today. Anything else you want to share or say? Where can people find you?
Well, thank you, by the way, so much. Yeah, I'm glad Instagram has brought us together. Sometimes the algorithm does do nice things like that. But yes, so for sure. So people can find me at That Healing Feeling. That's my handle on Instagram. And on my Instagram, you can consume my content. I have a podcast called That Healing Feeling, where I give out loads of information. I have lots of free content. And then I also work with clients in the program that I'm mentioning here, which you can find by clicking on the link in my bio or my website, faithashenden.com. I try to give out as much information as I can to really meet people where they're at, whether it's the beginning of their journey and the middle or wherever. So wherever you're at, I have a lot of like gentle education to kind of integrate this information and really just be like a welcoming space for anyone who's curious about empowerment and self-healing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.